Welcome to Austin Liti Limits, a series where authors talk to authors about books and writing. I'm Scott Simmergren.
And I'm Larry Brill. You know, Scott and I have had our share of successes.
And awards.
His last novel, To Squeeze a Prairie Dog, won 3 book awards. His latest novel, The Benevolent Lords of Sometimes Island, has been getting great reviews.
Larry has won his share of awards too. His latest book is out now, The Printer and the Strumpet. Here at Austin Liti Limits, we're working with our good friends at Book People to introduce readers to our favorite authors.
Well, naturally, during these days of pandemic, we've had to move our author interviews online until the bookstore is up and running again 100%.
In this episode, I had a chance to sit down with author Johnnie Bernhardt.
Johnnie was born in Houston and grew up in Grenado, a tiny ranching community about 90 miles west of there. She's a former teacher and a journalist with a degree from the University of Houston and a passion for reading and writing. She's living in Ocean Springs, Mississippi these days and is a member in good standing in the Pulpwood Queens Book Club. Her first 2 novels, A Good Girl and How We Came to Be, were both finalists for the William Faulkner William Wisdom Creative Writing Competition. Her new book is Sisters of the Undertow.
Please welcome to the show, Johnnie Bernhardt.
Thank you, Scott. It's great to be here.
Thanks for being here. How's it going in Mississippi?
Well, it's a rainy day. My husband and I spend part of our life on coastal Mississippi. You probably recognize Biloxi. I live in a little town near there, right on the Mississippi Sound. And then we have a place in Central Texas, bordering on West Texas, that'd be about an hour and a half west of Kerrville. And I'm originally from Houston.
Oh, excellent.
So, yeah, Mississippi is where my husband works.
When I was in junior high, I lived in Montgomery, Alabama, and I used to spend summers in Gulf Shores, and we would go to Biloxi in that area or to Panama City Beach, and so I'm familiar with that area. Really pretty. So let's get started. Your book,
Yes,
Sisters of the Undertow. It has siblings dynamics on full display. Why did you want to write about these 2 sisters?
Well, this is my 3rd novel, and I always write about family relationships and different roles women play. So I was very curious about yin and yang in sibling relationships. Children born of the same biological mother and father can be vastly different in personality. So I'm always curious as a writer about juxtaposition, always. I find it very intriguing. So there were a couple of things that inspired this story. I had been watching a national broadcast news program one morning, and a very beautiful young woman married to an NFL player appeared. And on the surface, which reflection to the title of the book, Sisters of the Undertow, on the surface, this woman appeared to live a charmed life. She has everything our society deems as being successful. She was physically attractive, healthy from what we saw on the surface, and was married to an NFL player, so a fantastic life. But below the surface, in the undertow, this young woman that had suffered many, many miscarriages. And she was very brave to come forward with that and give it a national voice. I was so impressed with her. I was struck by that juxtaposition again in her story, where it appeared she had everything, yet fate had given her a different story. So I followed that lead, and we meet the mother of this story, who has had repeated miscarriages, and what that can do to a woman psychologically. And the other part that inspired the story is when my first novel came out, A Good Girl. It's set in Texas and Mississippi. It's a family saga. One of the first groups to champion me were librarians. I had no idea what to do. It was frightening. And these people just wrapped their arms around me. And I was invited to speak at the Biloxi Library. And I just knew in my mind, what this was going to be. I was going to read a book, sell a couple of books, and have some cookies and coffee, right? But that was not what was meant to happen that day. The Biloxi Library is located next to the VA hospital. It is in a downtown area where many of the homeless vets live. And when I watched this all unfold before me, I was struck at the gracious humanity of the librarian, because her role has changed like librarian roles so much from when I was a kid growing up in Texas and walked to the library or rode my bike. It is now in many metropolitan areas become daycare for the homeless. But I watched this librarian, I learned a lot from her, and I watched the patrons, the homeless, the broken vets, and I had one of the greatest author events of these three novels, and that was the privilege of reading to them. It was an event that took place almost 5 years ago that I've never forgotten. So those two events drove the plot and the characters for Sisters of the Undertow.
Very interesting. So the sisters, like you said, they're very different. They're as polar opposites as can be. Kim's the beauty queen in high school, and then her younger sister has a slew of disabilities and is not as attractive on the outside. But the older sister is very prickly, particularly as she gets older. She's very judgmental. So what made you decide to tell the story through her instead of the younger sister, Kathy, or maybe as a third person narrator? How did you come to terms with the type of character that Kim is to tell that, this particular story?
I interviewed a lot of women who had had miscarriages or had a special needs child or had a child with a terminal illness that would disrupt, and I apologize for lack of a better word, that would bring a very difficult dynamic into the family life. And there were a lot of discussion on how the siblings reacted, and it's across the board. Okay. So there's jealousy that child, especially for a young person, there's jealousy that child may receive more attention, particularly during adolescence when a child is needing more guidance. Okay, adolescence is where we learn all the scary things about boys and girls and how we should react to peer pressure and everything. And that is Kim. That's the protagonist. Now, there is no fault of the parents for the path that this protagonist has taken. Kim is also developed socially by a peer group she's largely invested in beginning in junior high. And I went to public schools in Texas, so in the Houston area, and we were grouped by ability. So Kim is highly influenced by this group. And the reason why I use that point of view, because as a writer, I'm making a statement about how do we define happiness in current society.
Mm-hmm.
What is really important, and how do we perceive others? Uh, I was very fortunate to do a TED Talk November 2020, and it was just a few days after a hurricane hit this area. And I live on the coast. So the night before I'm walking through, it hit at night. I always have a hurricane in one of my books. Why? Because I know them. And that's a twist of fate. So the night before, I'm walking through this house. It's a little cottage near the water, and the walls are shaking, and we've lost power. And I'm wondering if I should go to the TED Talk, which a local TV station said they'd help me out. And so if you look at that TED Talk on YouTube, you'll hear a leaf blower and chainsaws in the background because people were outside trying to make a path in the little downtown area, and life continued as it always should. But in that TED Talk, I address the human story and what connects us all despite geography, race, and religion. That is the need to love and be loved. It's universal. And that's really what I'm trying to say in Sisters of the Undertow.
It was rough for me. It was rough reading about their relationship and seeing how she treated Kathy, who's genuinely a good person. She has a pure, I'm not gonna say pure heart. She has like a pure soul, and the simple things in life make her happy, which I appreciate. And it seems like she's become the more successful adult, even though she has more limitations from the start. She has a happy life, so I did appreciate that.
I'm going to get you back to Kim, in that who is the last person that Kim prays for and asks about?
Right.
We don't want to spoil the novel. It is her sister.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of symbolism with water in this book, uh, a baptism, an undertow. So Hurricane Harvey acts as a baptism for Kim.
Sure. So let's get into your life as a writer. Are you I'm going to sit down and write no matter what type of writer every morning, or do you write when you're inspired?
Well, I'm always thinking about story, always. And with my first novel, I was that writer. Because I was under this fear that if I didn't, something would leave and I wouldn't get it back. So I stayed very disciplined to the same time and pounding it out. And I learned in time, perhaps with more confidence, and every writer has a different story. This is just what worked for me. Perhaps with more confidence, I realized it's okay to write one really good sentence. If that's all that you write when you sit down to write, that's okay. That's a bonus day. Some days I don't write one good sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Some days it's all about editing it out. But I have a different process now. But I'm always thinking about story.
I find this very fascinating because the more writers I talk to, it's just that the answer to that question is just so different. And some folks, they got to put the butt in the seat and try to do something, and some don't. I mostly try to write when I'm inspired, and I've discovered after 9 books that I don't have to write every day. I need time to kind of unwind and absorb life and get re-inspired, and then I've also discovered that it just comes back. Because early on, like you were saying, I was worried that maybe if I didn't write, that I would lose that desire or that creativity would disappear. But I've discovered that it just comes back, and stories will pop in my mind at the weirdest times. The current novel I'm working on, I woke up in the middle of the night back in the fall, and I was just sitting on the couch by myself, petting my cat, and that story popped in my mind, and I was like, "That's gonna be the next one." And it just came out of nowhere. It was really bizarre.
There's many different ways that this craft can be done, but I've found I've evolved somewhat in that, and I love it. I feel grateful that I could spend my life doing this. I love being an English teacher. Um, I worked as a journalist for a while in Houston. I still do a lot of things to support literacy with the Texas Center for the Book and letters about literature for students, junior high and high school students in Texas. I love reading those letters because it's a reminder to me how powerful a story can be to a reader, to a young reader. It could be life-changing.
Oh, sure. What's a book you've read lately that you really enjoyed?
Oh my goodness. Anything, and I wrote it down because I just finished reading it a few days ago. Anything is Possible by Elizabeth Strout. And then I have this South Texas accent. For those listeners, that's Strout. She is the brilliant woman that wrote Olive, that won the Pulitzer, and Olive Again.
Mhm.
And Anything is Possible is like a collection of short stories. They're beautiful character sketches where it's like a chapbook of poetry. They're all connected. Brilliant, flawless, gorgeous. I can't say enough about that author. There's a reason why she's won the Pulitzer. So everything I've read about her is fantastic. I also get to read a lot of debut authors. I'm with the Pulpwood Queens International Book Club. That's originally from Jefferson, Texas. So good for that Jefferson, Texas gal, Kathy L. Murphy, that's connecting all these readers and writers. And you need to join us, Scott. We have a good time. For the guy authors, y'all are timber guys, but we're Pulpwood Queens, okay? Paying homage to East Texas and those paper mills. So love reading my fellow Pulpwood Queen authors, of course, your novel as well. It's been a good year for reading. That reading and writing, that's one positive thing about COVID.
That's for sure. I've done a lot of reading this year. So, okay, so this is the time of the show where we do the lightning round. It is a concept we stole from inside the actors' studio, but it's not their concept. They stole it from Bernhard Pivot, who stole it from Marcel Proust. But this is our own version of it. So, are you ready, Johnnie
I'm ready.
Bernhardt, for the lightning round? What is your favorite word?
Love.
What is your least favorite word?
Hate.
What turns you on?
Connecting.
And what turns you off?
Connecting with people. Non-acceptance of others.
What is your idea of happiness?
A great meal, being around people I love that love me.
Excellent. Who is your favorite author?
Gabriel Marquez.
Nice choice. Nice choice. If you could be a character from any well-known novel, who would you be?
I would be Scout. She's brave, unencumbered, spirited. I love Scout. Always have.
From To Kill a Mockingbird, I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
Excellent. What profession other than your own would you want to attempt?
Other than my own writing, I'd love to work for a publishing company and work with other authors. I love that. I love helping. I love being in a teaching position.
Excellent. What profession would you least want to do?
Stockbroker.
Okay.
I know money is important, but if I spent my whole day and counting it and figuring out how to make more, I'd be sad.
I know, little to be
But
desired.
kudos to those who can.
Okay, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you reach the check-in desk?
Well done.
Well done, Johnnie Bernhardt. Thank you for being on our show. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.